Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm the Dead Man, and today I'm going to do a review, or tonight, should I say? I'm going to do a review of Strange New Worlds, Season 3, Episode 6, The Sehlat, who that ate its tail. And I think I wrote the wrong title in the video, in the stream, so I'll have to go back and change that. But anyway, Kirk is on the Farragut, and it starts off with a first officer's log, and he's basically saying how they've been doing missions. It's kind of like Star Trek Beyond. Now that I think about it, I just now thought about that. How he's kind of bored. They've been doing survey missions, but he wants to go out, go on away missions. Go down to the planet, and his captain is a Vulcan, and she kind of does things by the book, and she doesn't want to take unnecessary risks, and so they repeat this word risk a couple of times, and it's obvious they're trying to evoke the episode of the original series where they go to this planet and there's these beings that have been trapped in these orbs. I forget the name of the episode, but basically they want the crew of the Enterprise to make android bodies or robot bodies for them, but they have to inhabit their bodies in order to do so, because the Enterprise crew doesn't have the knowledge to do this, and shit goes awry. But there's a speech in that episode if you watch Star Trek, or familiar with it at all, if you're not, why are you here? Do you like to just hear me say 10,000 times? And there did it again. But he says, risk is our business, and that's what they're trying to kind of call back to. And I've gave this show a lot of shit, with saying that they use callbacks and Easter eggs to kind of distract people from like bad writing or bad dialogue or just a poor story or whatever, and I stand by that statement. But it is nice to have some callbacks and Easter eggs. I don't mind fan service when it's done right. And so anyway, he says to the captain, why don't we send an away team down there to survey this planet? And she says no. And all of a sudden the planet starts like kind of breaking up, and I noticed these guys, they destroyed Vulcan, they destroyed Romulus. They love destroying planets and copying Star Wars. But I don't. Okay, but that's not the. That's either near there, here or there. So the captain is injured during this because he calls for brace for impact, and the captain is injured, and so now he's in charge of the Farragut, and they're like, one of the crew members, like the navigation person, is like, what was the cause of that? And he's like, that right there, or something like that. And that's the teaser. And then and they sent out a distress call. I forgot to mention this. They sent out a distress call, and they say that the comms are down. So they basically sent out a distress call like right in the nick of time, basically, because the Enterprise shows up and it starts firing on this. It's like this huge doomsday machine type ship, but it's not the doomsday machine. So when I was first watched this, I thought, oh my god, they're just going to copy the doomsday machine all over again. But it's not. It's almost like somebody pointed out. It's kind of like a pirate ship, because the front of the ship is like this big skull that just eats fucking ships or swallows them whole. And but the Enterprise's weapons are like basically useless towards this thing, and the so crew of the Enterprise beam aboard the frigate, and you have Chapel, Spock, Uhura, Scotty, and Leon. And they beam aboard the ship. The ship's damaged. Scotty's like noticing how so many things are falling apart, and they basically have to. There's a guy that's wounded. He's got like internal bleeding, so Chapel immediately goes to sick bay, and then Scotty's like, "I need to go to engineering." And that's when they mention that the comms are not only are the comms down between ships, internally on the ship the comms are down. So they can't even use their communicators. So Spock tells them to just meet, go to your respective places, and then meet back on the bridge when you're done. And then so Spock, Uhura, and Leon head to the bridge. There's like they're trying to figure out what the hell this thing is, and Lynn says the destroyer of worlds, because it's been going around to different planets. Like they're trying to obtain like this element, some sort of element. And then Kirk hails the Enterprise, and Pike basically tells him, "Look, I know this is your first command or whatever, and you don't want to abandon ship, but you've got to evacuate. There's people. They don't have a surgeon. The chief medical officer is dead. So I wonder who's going to fill that role. Could it be his initials are LM? So Leon has to bring back. So they have those, in TOS they have those little the little square plastic-looking things that hold information. They insert it into the computer or whatever. She has one of those. They're basically trying to download all of the critical information from the frigate before they evacuate and take it to the Enterprise before it's like destroyed or whatever. And that was a nice little Easter egg. It's the first time I've ever seen them do that. So that's pretty cool. So the ship swallows the Enterprise, and now they're kind of tangled in the belly of the beast, so to speak. And basically, what they figure out is that this is like a scavenger ship, and it's like hundreds of years old, and the Klingons have encountered it, and they have their own name for it, and other species have encountered it, and they have their own name for it, and they basically Borgify, for lack of a better term, other ships. So they take the best parts of other ships and use them for their ship, because the bigger the ship gets, the more they have to like scavenge for parts and stuff. And so Kirk is now in command. So Leon beams back to the Enterprise, and and the captain needs surgery. The captain of the Farragut needs surgery, and Chapel says she's not qualified, so she beamed the captain back to the Enterprise. So now Kirk is definitely in charge, So Kirk is in his ready room. The ship is damaged pretty badly, and he's talking. Scotty comes in, or they come in. They all come in, and he tells Scotty, you need to basically perform a miracle. And this is like before Scotty is the known miracle worker that we know now, that we know from TOS. So they're building that up, which I appreciated. There's other people that didn't like this episode, and they're free to have that opinion. They thought, Kirk should be, more, decisive and know what the hell is going on. And that's true, but this isn't the Kirk that we know from TOS. He's still learning. But, and I don't think they did him dirty. As a matter of fact, I didn't like the actor that plays Kirk, Paul Wesley. I didn't like him when they first brought him on. But in this episode, like, there's some Kirkism there that's different than, like, Chris Pine. And it's not copying Shatner, but you can see it. And you know it when you see it. So there's an umbilical. They figure out that there's an umbilical cord coming from this ship to the Enterprise that's sucking their power. And the Farragut is so damaged. Scotty basically mentions that, they're not interested in the Farragut because it's so damaged. And like I said, he tells them to perform some miracles. He wants to, because the ship takes the Enterprise and then they get out of there. And Kirk tells them, we need to go chase them down and find the Enterprise. Spock starts to quote regulations, and he says, regulations would have us tuck tail and go back to the starbase. But I have my brothers on that ship, and you guys have your crew on that ship, and, we have people that we care about. We're not going to just give up on them. And so there's a point on the Enterprise where you see the Jeffries tubes, which look, because they have to try. I think they mentioned that the turbo lift's not working either, so they have to travel through the Jeffries tubes, and it actually looks like the one from TOS. So good on that. Good. We're doing good so far. Aldentium is what they're looking for. What that is, I don't know. But they, it's just made up word. And so they go. Another thing is Pelia is not. She's like, well, they mentioned that she's 5,000 years old, so older than what we originally thought. She's not annoying this time, thank God. But they need to fire the thrusters. So on the Enterprise, they need to fire the thrusters, which is a chemical reaction. but they don't have comms, so they would have to do them manually. So you would have to, somebody would be in one part of the ship doing the thrusters, and while somebody on the bridge is giving them commands, but they don't have comms. So basically, they Pelia comes up with the idea to, and you've seen it in the trailers, to manually wire the Enterprise with telephones that she has in her quarters, like actual telephones, like antique telephones. Now, some might argue, is like, how will they make that work? And they don't have telephone lines. And then, well, this is like the 23rd century. I think they could, between her and and the rest of them, they can figure it out. I haven't heard anybody make that argument, but that's one that I just came up with. So Kirk tells Scotty basically to push the engines so they can overtake the scavenger ship, because they figure out that there's a planet called Sullivan's Planet that has abundance of aldentium. So that would be where the next stop would be. So they can meet them there and rescue the Enterprise. And Scotty warns against it, says you shouldn't push these the engines this hard because they're already at their maximum. But he tells them to do it anyway, and they end up like dead in the water, is what Scotty says. They end up failing, and now they're kind of dead in the water. So their options are to evacuate the ship through the shuttles, because right now that they evacuated the injured onto the Enterprise, and it's basically just essential personnel who aren't injured. So basically just them, and so it would only require a few shuttles, And then he gives them another option, which is I don't remember what the other option was, but two very shitty options. And this is basically Kirk's, it's a no-win scenario. But as we know, Captain Kirk does not believe in the no-win scenario. So they're kind of talking, and they're saying we should do this and this, and they're kind of getting in his head, and he's kind of like, kind of pissed off about the whole situation, and he walks off the bridge. And again, some people didn't like this, and I think it refers back to, and I did a review of this, the Ultimate Computer, where the Ultimate Computer basically beats their ships, the other ships that they're testing against. And he says, one of the admirals says, or Commodore says, give my regards to M5 and Captain Dunsel, which is a Starfleet term for that cadets use, or whatever, or midshipmen use for someone who's irrelevant or unneeded. So if M5 would have not gone the way it did, then captains of a starship are no longer needed. And Kirk leaves the bridge, doesn't say shit, and goes to his quarters. And in that episode, McCoy visits him and kind of talks him through the situation. And they're talking about on this episode that he kind of leaves, doesn't say shit, goes to the ready room or the conference room or whatever it is, and they're like kind of bewildered, and they're kind of like, you know, what are we supposed to fucking do, you know? And Uhura was like, well, I've worked with him before, and he like gave me the confidence, you know, and he saved my life. I don't remember that episode, you know, I'd have to go back and watch it, but you know, he's a competent leader, like he knows what he's doing. So she kind of goes to bat for him. And then Scotty's like talking about, well, what if he can't do the job? What do we do? And Chapel's like, well, there would be a medical reason for us to, you know, kind of dismiss him of his captaincy, you know, and obviously Spock is the highest ranking officer there. And Spock says, you know, I'm less emotional and I think I'm going to go talk to him. And right before he said that, I was screaming at my television saying, Spock, go talk to him. Because it would, in this situation, it would be either Bones or Spock or both. And they finally fucking set it up. I know that they're trying to set up like a year one, you know, what we saw, what we didn't see of the 5-year mission or whatever. And this feels like a test run for that. And like I've said in the past, Ethan Peck is getting better at playing Spock when he's not being all goofy and emotional and shit. So he goes to so back on the Enterprise. Pike is you know, it's Pike and Leon basically trying to stop this this umbilical tube thing, and so they have to go through the ship, and these scavengers have invaded the ship basically, and there's areas of the ship where there's like gas that they can't get through to, and they're in like this bar area, I guess, and the scavengers are trying to break through, and they find this like bottle of liquor that Pike was, you know, somebody gifted to Pike, and Leanne says, you know, I'll get you another one. So they basically set up like a firebomb type situation where the scavengers come through, they shoot with their phasers, and it kind of blows up and catches them on fire, because their suits are like, they have these space suits that are, you know, the phasers aren't even phasing them, I guess, pun intended, and so they're losing people. And if you go back to the cage, and I think that's what they're setting this up to, because Pike talks about how basically he's tired of losing so many people. And in the cage, he has a discussion with the doctor where he's like thinking of leaving Starfleet, and kind of because he's lost so many people. So I think that's what they're setting up there. So then Pelia, that's when she talks about her telephone thing. And they made a joke. So Ortega's has the telephone, and it's one of those more old-timey looking ones, like you might see on Andy Griffith's show or something. And she says, calls it what is this, a personal massager? I didn't catch that last time, and I guess people are kind of pissed off because it was a dildo joke. I barely fucking caught it. I didn't. I mean, um, but whatever. So anyway, back on the Farragut, Pike is he sets up like the 3D chess thing and board, and he's talking about how him and the captain used to play, would they would play 3D chess, and there would be times where he almost beat her, and he couldn't quite figure out how to beat her, and Spock's basically telling him, just talking to him, and he's like, I don't have any answers right now. The the two options are not the options I want to go with. And I normally I can think of something, I can't think of anything. And then he tells this story about his mom, had this expression, the dog who caught the car. He's like, he's been placed in command, and and now he's like, now I don't know what to do with it. And Spock tells him about how his brother has talked good about him, how he, that Kirk, is a good guy who's knows what he's doing, and da da da. And then Spock says, on Vulcan we have a similar phrase, the Sehlat who ate its tail. And I was thinking, again, this would have been perfect time for Bones to come in and say something, but Spock's kind of taking that place, and he basically tells him, your instincts have got us this far. I suggest you stick with them. And they have a good, like, Spock Kirk moment, like you would see on TOS, and I loved it. I love that. But so he comes back out onto the bridge, and there's Scotty, Uhura, Spock, and Chapel, and he basically makes this speech like, okay, look, what do we know about these people? What can we use to our advantage? They have to have a weakness somewhere. And Scotty says something, and he's like, that's it, Scotty, you just gave me their weakness. And right about that time, I didn't notice this last time. I went back and watched again, and you can almost hear this na 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 na, the Wrath of Khan music, because I mean you can see in the background there's like scorch marks on near where the door to the bridge would be, which is almost exactly Wrath of Khan. It's almost exactly the same location, and I swear I was like, holy shit, they really tried hard on this one, man. They really went after it. So the plan is to basically make the Farragut look like it has a bunch of aldentium, but they don't. And that's Scotty's job. They can use like the nacelles to do, they kind of technobabble through it. Then back on the Enterprise, it's just a lot of action, a lot of shoot 'em ups, and there's a point where Pike's like dead to rights, and the Scavenger doesn't just looks at him for a while and doesn't shoot him. And he turns to Leon. He's like, they didn't shoot me. They didn't, like, why is that? So we're setting up a little bit of a mystery here. Uh, so then they, I can't read my own handwriting. Oh, the idea is to get rid of the umbilical cord. They need to kind of sour it, kind of like in Galaxy's Child on TNG, where they had to get the alien off of the hull. So they decide to dump a bunch of boron gas, and that would probably make them pull back the umbilical cord. And so it's they're chasing down more scavengers. There's like one more left, and they get to the scavenger, and at the same time, Kirk's plan is working. They get rid of the nacelles and use that to kind of disable their ship, and it, kind of blows up or whatever, and they break free of the umbilical cord, and they're chasing down the last scavenger, and they shoot him, and then Kirk blows up their ship, and they take off their masks, and they're human. That's like the big twist, is they're human. So it turns out that this was a ship of it's a ship of like 7,000 people. So it's the descendants of this group of astronauts that left Earth after, I guess it was after the Third World War and the environmental destruction of Earth was bad, so they left. And I guess they're like a pre-warp civilization, or pre-warp type of group. And I guess Peleus says they were the best of what humanity had to offer. So Kirk is kind of feeling bad. He's and because he couldn't save him. They couldn't. They didn't have time to beam him off of the ship. So he's kind of feeling bad, and Pike comes in, and he kind of gives him a talk, and he's talking about how, you either have empathy for somebody or you don't. And Kirk's like, well, I didn't even consider them. It wasn't even a consideration. I just knew that I had to save the Enterprise, and I didn't think about any of that. And he talks about how, when he was talking to Spock, he's talking about how he had ordered Scotty to push the engines, and that was the wrong call and stuff. So this is kind of like Kirk learning a lesson and learning a morality, and just an overall morality tale. And I thought it was great. I thought it was really, really great. It reminded me of some of the best Star Trek episodes ever. It very much. At the end of the episode, I was like thinking to myself, did I just watch an episode of Star Trek, as in like TOS? Because that's what it felt like. I mean, like I've said, I've gave this show a lot of shit from time to time. I've gave it praise from time to time. And they nailed this one. I know some people may disagree, but I really liked it. It felt like a TOS episode. It's mainly contained on the ship, which a lot of TOS was kind of like that. It reminded me of the Doomsday Machine without them completely copying the Doomsday Machine. It was an original idea. They're not they're not saying, okay, the cues are here, or I mean, they're not taking from past episodes or whatever. It was an original idea, and I have to give them a lot of credit for that, and I give them credit for that scene with Spock and Kirk, and you know, I've gone on to different streamers and put in super chats saying, "Hey, watch this episode. If you don't watch any other episode, watch this one, and you might actually like it." You know, I'm sure there's things that people could point out that they don't like or they could criticize, and maybe I'm being a little bit rose tinted glasses or whatever, but they made an effort, and I'm gonna give them credit for that. I don't think they were trying to make Kirk look bad. I think they were trying to show that Kirk is growing, and he understands the mistakes he made, and he's not going to make those same mistakes in the future. And he's, turning into the Kirk that we know. The one that doesn't, he already doesn't believe in the no-win scenario. That's from Academy days. So he already doesn't believe. So he's already thinking outside of the box than most. They even say in the episode, well, that's an unconventional, that's an unconventional plan. And he tells them, Scotty's not going to like the second part of the plan, which was ejecting the nacelles. So I gave it. I wanted to be a little bit higher, but then I'm thinking, okay, there's other episodes like Balance of Terror, or In the Pale Moonlight, or All Good Things, or whatever. I can't get that high of a rating, but comparatively, and for this show and this season, it is the best one by far. And I want to say like an 8.5. Maybe I'm being a little too nice. Some people might think that. I don't know, but it does look like there's somebody or some people out in the chat, so I'll take a look and say hello. It's hold on. Oh, here we go. It's Gavin Blackburn again. Hello again. He says, I hated the way they presented Kirk in this episode. So what did you hate about it, Gavin Blackburn? Ethan Peck is a great actor. It's just the poor scripts they hand him. Yep, that's exactly what it is. It's the poor scripts. Hey, if you didn't like the way they portrayed Kirk, I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is when I say something that the bigger fans of this show, I say something negative, and they just like, it's like I killed their dog or something. If you didn't like the way they presented Kirk, I thought that they were presenting Kirk. I thought that he had some Kirk mannerisms going on. And I think they're just trying to show, I I could see like you might would think it's kind of immature to kind of walk off the bridge or whatever, or maybe he could have handled the situation better, especially. And he does say that we got off on a wrong on the wrong foot, and there's nothing. The opening scene with Kirk seemed lifted straight from JJ. Yeah, yeah, I did say that. It it was just like Star Trek Beyond, and yes, should a captain be or a should a captain be saying, "I'm bored. Let's go risk people's lives on a planet." Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Uh, but that's okay. I mean, I didn't think about that until I started the stream. I was like, oh, that's just like Star Trek Beyond. But I thought Star Trek Beyond was the closest thing to TOS that they've ever gotten with Abrams. Uh, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it seemed to be a little bit closer. Anyway, thanks Gavin for showing up again, and I will be back. It looks like I lost a subscriber. Wonder what that's all about. I like the scenes with Spock. Yeah. Um, I will be back for my show, The Red Hour, on Sunday evening, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll talk about an episode of Voyager, a random episode of Star Trek. I'm the Dead Man, and thanks for everyone that came out tonight. Thanks for anyone that's lurking, and thanks for anyone that watches this in the future. Have a good night.